Okay, so we'll take a little closer look at the instrument track now. And to do that, let's back up and look at its predecessor. And before the advent of the what Steinberg calls the instrument track, uh, MIDI had to be recorded in two tracks. You had one track to hold the MIDI data, and then that was fed to a device of some sort. In this particular example, to an external Roland D110 synthesizer module, and then the audio was recorded from that. So you had one track for MIDI, one track for audio. And in this situation, if you look in the inspector at the MIDI channel number, this was critical because any given box could only be on one channel at a time. And you see this one's on channel 1, and with the data routed appropriately, I can even, from within Cubase, I can open that up and I can change the various patches inside of my external sound generator here, but only on the correct channel. If I switch that to another channel, there's nothing there, and it wouldn't play back. But beyond that, this is just a cumbersome way to work. So Steinberg found a way to bring those two elements together in the instrument track. And what an instrument track consists of is MIDI input on the front end, but instead of outputting to a specific channel, it's going directly to one of the VST instruments inside of Cubase. And in this case, a synth called Spectre. And you would just simply open that up and set it to whichever kind of sound you wanted. In this case, this is a lead synth, and you would simply, you record that part. When you're ready to add other parts, you create more instrument tracks, each one with its own synth module. And that's very convenient. It's a one-to-one relationship. And if you want to go in and, change your pad sound, you open this version of Spectre and change it there. The downside is you end up creating many, many copies of the same synth, and that eats a lot of memory. But in this case, I guess the salient point here is that the MIDI channel is irrelevant. I can change this to anything. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to change that to any or all or none, because it's not using a MIDI channel to route the data. It already knows which sound generator to connect to because it's created in that track. Now, to bring this full circle, if we come up to what I would call current version, we have some VST instruments such as Groove Agent, such as Halion, that are just powerhouses, and we're back to using MIDI channel numbers again. In this case, let me open up an instance of Groove Agent 4, and this one VST can contain as many as 4 drum machines or drum kits within it. In this case, I've got Percussion Agent. For doing hand percussion stuff, we have an acoustic kit and then a drum machine. If we play this ensemble, you'll see there's a lot going on. If I want to create another track to add supplemental stuff on top of that, just create a basic MIDI track and call it extra drums. Okay, if you look within Groove Agent itself, if I select the first drum kit, Percussion Agent, that sits on, has been selected to MIDI channel 1. And we're back to using MIDI channels within this instrument to segregate where the data flows. If I go to Acoustic Agent, I'll set that to MIDI channel 2 and Beat Agent here to 3. Now I can direct where my external, or rather extra drums, are going to go by setting the MIDI channel here. If I want to access just the Percussion Agent, I can do that by selecting 1. If I wanted to have this feed the Acoustic Agent sound generator, I can do that by selecting MIDI channel 3, and then so forth for the other component parts. And so anytime you have these big workstation style VST synths like Groove Agent, like Halion, where you can have a whole bunch of different things in different racks, we're back to using the MIDI channel to access them. So keep in mind, if you're using those more elaborate synths, that the MIDI channel number down here is going to be increasingly important. And like so many of the other things we've looked at, if you're using it right, it's going to help you out. But if you have it set incorrectly, it can generate really confusing results. Either you won't be hearing any sound, or too many things will be firing at the same time. So, okay, now I want to take a quick look at 3 track types that are very easy to confuse, and those are the group channel, VCA fader, and folder track because they all involve nesting and combining, and it's easy to get crossed up on what's doing what. Let's start with the easiest of the three, and that's the folder track. If I create a folder track, this is just really a housekeeping tool, and it's designed primarily to keep your desktop tidied up. So I can take a group of tracks and I can put them in that folder and then close it. I can also take a group of tracks, right click, and say move to new folder, and it'll create the folder and put them there all in one shot. Then I just undid that. I can open that folder back up, take them out if I wanted to. There's another folder track here. But the important thing is these tracks are still active. Even when the folder's closed, they're still playing. Nothing's happened to their routing. It's just being tidied up on the screen. Now, there is this group editing function that we'll look at when we get to the chapter on audio editing. And it allows you to slice everything in the folder simultaneously for moving stuff around. It's cool, but we'll get to that. So to keep things clean here, I'm going to pull these back out of that folder, and then I can delete that without losing anything. So second type that has a similar look and feel, if I take I'm going to create a group channel, and let me do this up higher on the screen. If I say add track, group channel, and notice that the icon associated with it shows kind of 3 into 1 there, almost like a good old-fashioned Y jack, right? Audio Y jack. And that's conceptually what's going on here. I'm going to call this guitars and create that. It happened to put this one in a folder. You can do it in a folder or not. Let me delete that. Now, this group track is an entirely different animal because we've created a new audio path in the busing in the background. So I can take all of my guitar stuff now, this bass mic, and instead of sending it to the stereo out, look at this. I've got a new output routing option, that guitars group. I'm going to send it there. And I'm going to take the rhythm guitar and send it there. I'm going to take all of these and route them appropriately. So they're all going to the guitars group, and then we select the guitars group. It's going to the stereo out. And the reason why you would do this is so that you can process everything in that group simultaneously. So if I open the guitars editor and apply an EQ of some sort, admittedly bizarre one, okay, that EQ curve is going to be applied to all the channels running into the guitar group and then out. Same for the various effects and stuff. Now, there are some applications for this also in film and video where they work with what are known as stems. So you might want to send all the dialogue to one group, all of the music to another group, Foley and sound effects and so forth. And then that makes the mix process a matter of 5 channels instead of 55 channels and so forth. But if I look at the mixer, press F3 here, by moving the guitars fader up and down, all of the stuff coming into that group is going to be faded in and out. I can't really change the balance within it, but I can make it all happen at one time. That's really close to what happens with VCA track. Let me get rid of this one just to keep things clean and show you one other aspect of that. I just deleted the group. I threw away the Y jack, and now look at all of our guitar routing. It has no output bus, so we have to go back and in this scenario, I have to manually reconnect them to the stereo outs there. The last type is the VCA, and that's an old throwback term for voltage controlled amplifier, which was a component on a traditional analog mixing board. And all in the world a VCA fader does is control other faders. It's almost like a remote control. And in this case, we already have a VCA set up for rhythm guitars. Hit F3 and open the mixing console back up. I'm going to use my G and H keys to adjust the width of the faders here. And by default, VCA faders are going to be green. And if I take the rhythm guitar VCA and move it up and down, you can see all of the associated channels come with it. And when I say associated, if you look up here above the panning window, this is your linking area. This is where you can decide which VCA groups to send things to. We have 2 VCA faders here, one for drums and one for guitars. So I could, if I wanted to, say, take this and send it to the guitar group as well. and now it moves along. I could also take these last three and send them over to that drums VCA. And we're not changing their audio routing. They're each discrete channels coming all the way through the mixing board and out to the stereo output. Now those are linked to the drums fader. And I have the option, I can still tweak my mix within this. I want this guy really soft. I want these two louder. And it's going to keep that ratio as we go up and down. Again, it's really just doing the work of four fingers with one finger. You can apply automation to the VCA itself, automation within it. We'll get to that in the mixing section. But where people get VCAs and groups confused is, I move one fader and everything coming to it is turned down. Now that same dynamic happens with a group, but it's happening also, it's happening because all of those signals are flowing into one audio channel. The VCA track itself has no audio content in it whatsoever. It's simply controlling the content in those other four, whereas a group track has, once you create it, the content actually flows through that. So those three are very similar in appearance, somewhat similar in function, but ultimately very different. And if you understand the key differences on the routing, especially between VCAs and groups, it'll help keep the confusion down on your more complex mixes. Okay, the last track type that I want to look at in detail is the arranger track. And just to clean things up here, I've used our visibility tab to hide or turn off those direct input channels, the inputs, outputs, the VCAs, and so forth. I've also split the display to keep the content stuff down below, the marker track, and our arranger track up at the top. Now, the basic concept here is we're going to cut our song into chunks, into building blocks, and then we can play with those blocks to create different arrangements. The project we're working with is one of the Alan Morgan projects, which is already very conveniently cut into neat, clean verse-chorus sections that loop well. So it's going to be easy to get this right. Make this a little bit larger, and let's take our pencil tool and simply define our blocks. So the intro, the verse, chorus, verse B, chorus B, the bridge, and then the outro, the ending. Now, it's applied an arbitrary ABC naming scheme to these blocks, and in this particular case, it'd be easy to eyeball it and figure out what's what, but let's do this. I'll come up here and let's turn on our info line, and I'll show you why. If you select a block, back to the regular object selection tool, here you can change its name in the info line. So we'll call this intro, and we'll name B verse A, to say VA. We'll call this one chorus A. This is going to be verse B. Chorus B. And bridge. Okay, now that we have our blocks named, it'll be easier to sort out the order. I'm going to turn on the editor, and now it's double-click a component on the right, and it sequences it on the left. So we want the intro, and then let's see what would happen if we went straight to the chorus, the bridge, then back to verse A, and let's have it do verse A a couple times. Let's have it do it 3 times. You can see the count going up there, and then we'll go to the outro. Just for instance, if you want to play any one of these sections while you're moving along, you just click the arrow. And it'll pick up there. The arranger mode is active. Well, let me turn the editor on here. I'm just going to let this sequence that we've created play, and you'll see how it jumps around in the different sections. Well, actually, I guess that didn't work really well because they were in the order as originally described there. Let's try this again from the chorus B part. Okay, now it would play through that one 3 times, so you get the idea. The, the flexibility here is actually pretty cool if the type of music that you're recording lends itself to neat chunks. But once you have this done, you can flatten the arranger change. You can even create and send this out to an entirely new project. Uh, all sorts of neat options. There's also this A/B comparison here, so you can create multiple arranger chains and then bounce back and forth between them just by clicking on that. We just have the one at the moment. Um, so that's a fairly powerful tool as well. And these other track types that we haven't looked at so far, the chord track, signature tempo, and so forth, we're going to get into those more in our sample project and the video track, especially with this dummy commercial that we're working on shortly. So we'll pick it up here in the next unit.